welcome to my latest Star Wars book review. This is one that I've been planning for months, and kind of things got in the way in the scheduling, kind of forced me to push it back, but I'm ready to do it now, and it's going to be a big one. We're going to be covering 14 books all in one video. I won't go super detailed with each book. I don't feel like I have to, but I'll explain more as we jump into things. But before I do that, I know I try to keep my Star Wars videos and my wrestling videos kind of separated, but I've got a couple of things coming up as far as the wrestling videos go, so I want to make you guys aware of those. So if you care about the wrestling videos, I've got a few updates for those. My next major wrestling video is going to come around either Friday, tomorrow, or Saturday. And it's going to include my weekly movie and TV show reviews, which is going to include a review of the Darkwing Duck series, the original Darkwing Duck series, which is appropriate considering he just came back. But on the wrestling side of things, I'm going to talk about the New Japan G1, Climax 30, and my thoughts on that overall tournament. It just wrapped up on Sunday, and I didn't get to see the finals until Wednesday, yesterday. So I've seen it, and now I can give my full feelings on it. And I will be giving that to you guys. I will also be talking about two major shows that are taking place this weekend. Bound for Glory from Impact Wrestling. An event that I've never missed a Bound for Glory. It's one of those things that became like kind of an October tradition for me as far as wrestling goes. And even though Impact is not the company that it was in terms of prestige, it's still something, I watch it every year. It's gotten to that, it's like a low stakes, low rent version of WrestleMania at this point. I watch it every year. And I will also be talking about Hell in a Cell, which is happening on Sunday, and give my thoughts on that show and that upcoming event. So there will be that. I also desperately need to talk about last night's AEW Dynamite with that, depending on how you feel about it, either amazing or amazingly bad MJF Y2J song and dance number that they did. So I need to talk about that as well. I definitely need to talk about that. So on the wrestling side of things, I think I'm going to be well covered in this video. The video that will be up either Friday or Saturday is going to be massive. There's no way to get around it not being massive, but hopefully you all enjoy it. And sometime next week will be my final WCW Nitro retrospective video where I cover the second half of 1998 and lead into the first Nitro of 1999 with the Finger Poke of Doom, which is where I said I was going to stop. People have begged me to keep on watching through 99 and 2000. I'm not going to do, and 2001. I'm not going to do that for several reasons. One, those shows are terrible and I do not want to subject myself to that much awfulness. Two, the shows, this is where Nitro was in the 3-hour phase. And even in 1998, where I was still enjoying the show, once the show moved to 3 hours, it became harder and harder to kind of watch it all. Because there's a lot more material to get through. It's an extra hour of content. So it's going to take me a while, especially in 1999 when they were still going full force on the 3-hour show deal. It would be very hard for me to sit through a bunch of shows that I hate that are that long. I just can't do it. But I will make a concession. At the end of the video, after I'm done talking about the Finger Poke of Doom and all the stuff that happened in the latter half of 1998 and my feelings on that period for WCW, I will do a brief summary of highlights for what happened in the dying days of WCW and talk about some of the things that I really, really hated and maybe even bring up a couple of things that I actually liked that happened during that period. We shall see. But I will try to cover a very loose, abridged version of that period as part of the video. Even though I didn't rewatch any of those shows because, God damn it, I just don't. A, I don't have the time, and B, I don't have the will, and that's a major, major problem. So, look for that video to come out sometime next week. So, and also, Weekday Warriors of Wrestling. I spoke to Eric right before I started filming, and we are going to be taping this week's episode on Friday. I don't know exactly what we're going to cover yet. We talk about the topics before we go on the air, and we haven't had a chance to sit down and talk about that yet. But the next episode of Weekday Warriors of Wrestling will come up probably sometime this weekend because we'll probably want to get it up before Hell in a Cell. I imagine Hell in a Cell is going to be a major talking point of the show. So we'll do that, and so you're going to be seeing a lot of me over the next couple of days. And I apologize for last week's episode. There was a major delay with last week's episode that was entirely my fault. It wasn't even a technical issue. It was just a major mishap that I caused, my stupid self caused. So there was a slight delay with that episode. But we're back on track, and we're going to have an episode for you either, depending on what Eric wants to do. It's either going to be sometime this weekend or it'll be very, very early next week, like Monday. Something like that. So be on the lookout for all of that. So, with that said, let's jump into the Star Wars topic of this video, the book series, the Young Jedi Knight Series, written by Kevin J. Anderson and Rebecca Moesta, who I discovered in my research of these books. They're actually a married couple. Kevin Anderson, I've talked about his contributions to the Star Wars Expanded Universe, some of it pretty good and fun, some of it not so great, Jedi Academy trilogy, that jumbled mess, but some of his short stories were really good, and I enjoyed it. I believe, memory serves me right, he wrote IG-88's story in Tales from the Bounty Hunter, and that thing is just fucking crazy, and totally, I did review that book, Tales from the Bounty Hunter, so be sure to check that out. It's, that IG-88 story is an absolute hoot, and so, Kevin J. Anderson, very dedicated to Star Wars for a while, and participated in writing several books, for the Expanded Universe, and the Young Jedi Knight series is one that I think a lot of people my age fondly remember because it was something that was readily available in what, when I was at the perfect age, like that 11, 12, 13, like that age. And it gave like younger readers of Star Wars something to kind of sink their teeth into. I think books like the Thrawn trilogy are written in a way where they're geared more towards like slightly older, like 16, 17, 18, maybe even older than that crowd, like into their 20s and adult age. It was geared towards already established fans. That's what the Thrawn trilogy was geared towards. But something like the Young Jedi Knight series, this is geared more towards not straight up kids, not like the Jedi Prince series was, which that was geared definitely towards kids, which made the excessive violence in it even more baffling, but and many of the other things that they did in it even more baffling, but I've already reviewed that series. Be sure to check that out. But the Young Jedi Knight series was it was written for that younger, again, like kind of preteen, early teen type of reader. And so because of that, they're a little bit simpler. While I was rereading these, the things that caught my attention was like, wow, I got through these much faster than I expected. They were very quick reads overall. It's actually the main reason why I decided to cover all 14 books in one video. Originally, my plan was to break it down into 3 videos because there's 3 separate story arcs for the Young Jedi Knight series. There's the books 1 to 6, which is the battle with the Shadow Academy. Then the next 5 books are the next 5 books deals with the Young Jedi encountering the Diversity Alliance. And then the last 3 books are kind of 3 standalone stories, but they're loosely tied together by a new character and the conflict with the Black Sun trying to make its triumphant return. So with those 3 different clear breaking points in there, I thought, okay, I can get 3 videos out of that. But then after rereading these things, I was like, man, I got through them so quickly that it probably makes more sense to just do the whole thing in one, because they're not the meatiest books in the world, because again, like I said, they're written for a younger audience, so they are very quick reads. Just to give you an idea, the New Jedi Order series, which is 19 books, that took me about a year and a half, I believe, to get through all 19 of those. The Young Jedi Knight series is 14 books. I got through all 14 books in 2 months. They're fairly quick reads, and I was reading slowly too. That's the other thing. Like I don't blaze through books. I tend to take my time because I want to absorb what I'm reading, and I'll even go back and reread parts just to make sure I understood what I read. And there wasn't a lot of that going on with these because they're fairly simple books, and they almost feel like a TV series the way they read. They kind of read very much like a TV series that a younger audience would enjoy. Good God, I hope I didn't just give Disney an idea. I discourage Disney, unless it's got the Mandalorian's name on it, I discourage anything Star Wars related that Disney is even toying around with the concept of. It's like, just don't do it. Just don't do it. Like the reverse of what the Emperor said in Revenge of the Sith. Don't do it. Just stop. Just stop what you're doing. especially movies. Don't you dare make another Star Wars movie. Okay, so now let me get off that soapbox. Anyways, so the first story arc, like I said, it's the dealings with the Shadow Academy. And that takes up the first 6 books in the series. Starts with Heirs of the Force. Then book 2, we get Shadow Academy, which officially introduces our main villains. The Lost Ones in book 3. Book 4 is Lightsabers. Book 5 is Darkest Hour. And then book 6 is Jedi Under Siege, which is the final battle with the Shadow Academy. So, like I said, I'm not going to go into each individual book and go into great detail with all of them because, again, none of them are really that greatly detailed. What I will say is that the overall story arc, and I will describe the story arc and kind of give you the broad strokes and the main events that take place. So the Young Jedi Knight series, all 14 books, they focus around like the new set of characters. And yes, Luke's in it, Han's in it, Leia's in it. Absolutely true, but they're not really the focus here. Chewie's in it, also not the focus. We get a new ragtag group of Jedi, and they will be the main focus for the 14-book series. And here we are introduced to an older Jaina and Jacen Solo, who are basically going to be the 2 main characters throughout the 14 books. The children of Han and Leia, the twins, the Solo twins, who up to this point we'd seen them as children and getting kidnapped God knows how many times. They even get kidnapped again in these books. It's like, god damn, they just cannot get out of trouble. The second book they get kidnapped and made prisoners of the Shadow Academy, and it's like, oh my god, these poor kids, they can't catch a break. But anyway, so they're going to be the main focus of this. Jaina is more of like the headstrong warrior type. Jacen is the more like spiritual thinker of the two. At least that was the case in the New Jedi Order series. Here it's like their characters aren't fully defined yet, and I feel like these books were like experimenting to try and like nail down personalities for them. Like here, Jacen likes to tell jokes, like really bad dad jokes. Star Wars dad jokes. Like Jacen Solo is the master of the dad joke here. And there's another Jedi that they pal around with who he is, I believe, constantly hitting on. I think that's the whole idea. Tenel Ka, who is from Princess Isildur's planet. Princess Isildur was the prince that was betrothed to Princess Leia in the courtship of Princess Leia and that whole thing. And Han Solo's rash actions almost caused a major dispute with another planet in the Republic. But yeah, so you get that connection. And it's really funny because she's like a no-nonsense, like super serious type of character. So whenever Jacen like jokes around with her, it's like, there's that comedic contrast there. Because I've said it before, like comedy is great when you get contrasting personalities. That's where you get like true, like really funny stuff. And even though his jokes are terrible, it's like, it's funny because she's just completely no-selling them. And it's a running gag that persists through all 14 books. I'm like, it's actually kind of funny. It's like, it's one of those things that when I revisited these books, I was like, man, I bet the jokes aren't going to age well at all. And a lot of the things in this are not going to age well at all. But to my surprise, I was actually entertained by it because the jokes were so bad. They were funny because they were so bad. And you had a character like Tenel Ka to kind of play off it a little bit. And even Jaina being like, dude, stop with the jokes. I felt like, what's that YouTube video with the boyfriend or husband with his wife or girlfriend, I forget which, in IKEA, and he's dropping all the puns and everything. That's what it felt like reading Jacen Solo's dialogue in this, whenever he was telling a joke. And so there's that, for sure. We also get a Wookiee to pal around with them, Lobaka, the nephew of Chewbacca. A Wookiee Jedi. That sounds like the coolest thing ever. But Lobaka is basically just a stand-in for Chewbacca. He doesn't really have that much of a personality outside of just being a Wookiee. And it was like, we want to create a new cast of characters. Kind of like what The Force Awakens was criticized for, where it's like, oh, they want to create a new cast of characters, but everyone is just kind of a stand-in for one of the older characters. That's kind of what you get here with Lobaka. He's really just a stand-in for Chewbacca. And there's even a stand-in for C-3PO, MTD, who is basically pocket C-3PO. He's basically like a droid, a handheld droid that translates Lobaka's Wookiee growls for the rest of the group to understand. And his personality is almost identical to C-3PO because it turns out C-3PO actually programmed him. So no surprise there. And he winds up being the butt of many jokes. He even gets reprogrammed by the bad guys at one point and becomes loyal to the Empire. As kind of like a joke that situation there. But it just kind of makes sense that like the technology would get smaller. It's like, we just need him to be a translator. We don't really need to do all the other functions of a protocol droid. So, all right, here's this little pocket 3PO that you can carry around. And he can, just... he's travel size 3PO, I guess is the best way to say it. So there's that, but, so there's a really kind of the main heroic characters, but then you get, like, the villains, and here in this first story arc, you get the Shadow Academy, which, it's the expanded universe, you gotta have somebody trying to bring the Empire back, and that's basically what the Shadow Academy is. It's an attempt to, have, like, Sith loyalist, teachers that teach a whole new generation of Sith Jedi, Dark Jedi, and it's the first step towards rebuilding the Empire. And there's a belief that the Emperor is still alive. Spoiler alert, turns out he's not. And it's all a ruse. They actually pull almost like a Wizard of Oz type deal, or even like Hand of Thrawn, where they thought, ooh, is Thrawn still alive? It's like, no, he's not. And they pull a little game like that. But the Shadow Academy is led by Brackus, who is a former student of Luke Skywalker's, who got kicked out of the Academy, and he said, fuck you, I'm going to take over everything. And so he's the main bad guy here, and he's also got a Night Sister as his kind of like second in command, and she operates as a trainer as well. And they try to train the Solo twins and Lubaka into joining, some of Luke's students. They try to get them to join against the Republic and everything, and lead the new Empire. Doesn't go the way they want. These people are nowhere near as incompetent as Trioculus, who might be the worst villain in Star Wars history, but they don't always succeed either. They also have, and actually the story arc kicks off with the twins and the other Jedi meeting an ex-TIE fighter pilot who got lost on Yavin 4, and they discover him and find him, and then he escapes and joins up with the Shadow Academy. So you get former Imperial personnel getting involved with them as well. And we also get a friend of the twins, Zek, who's kind of like one of the lost ones, I guess you would call him. He's introduced in book 3. And he's kind of like a street urchin type of character. Immediately in my mind, I'm thinking like Oliver Twist. And he befriends the Solo twins, and when he doesn't fit in with the twins and their whole like fancy dinner party that they invite him to or anything, leaves him open to be discovered by the Shadow Academy and ultimately kidnapped by them and ultimately trained by them, and he becomes like the lead Dark Jedi in this new order of the Shadow Academy. And that's one thing I do like about this series is the, even though a lot of it does feel very repetitive, a lot of what I just described comes straight from the original trilogy. It's just they're kind of playing Mad Libs with the script and just switching out the names, and a lot of it does sound the same. But they do focus a lot on the training of the Jedi and what Luke does with these younger students. I mean, Lightsabers, book 4, is basically all about training, and that's all it is. And we get to see it from the light side and the dark side perspective throughout the course of the 6 books. And it all builds quite nicely into a wild climax as the Shadow Academy invades Yavin 4 and tries to take down the Jedi. They're ultimately defeated, Zek is redeemed, and that sets us up for the next story arc to continue. But overall, I felt like while the Shadow Academy story arc, while it relied a little too heavily on things that we'd already seen, and again, it's another example of the Empire trying to come back, which the expanded universe beat that to friggin' death. It does succeed at introducing the characters and moving along at a nice brisk pace and nice complete beginning, middle, and end story where it does feel like there are some stakes involved, and I think it's different enough to where it doesn't feel like a total rehash. And like I said, this is a book for younger audiences and to try and win over new Star Wars fans and give them material to be excited about. And I think to that end, books 1 through 6 definitely succeed. And I was generally entertained all the way throughout. It's a nice taste of something familiar. And having read these books when I was much younger and back in middle school, it was a nice nostalgic feel to kind of read these kind of simpler Star Wars books from a simpler time when I was first really... I had read the Thrawn trilogy, but the Young Jedi Knight series was really like the first thing that I really... I had to read all 14 books. It was like something that I felt like I had to read. And it had a lot of nice nostalgic feelings because of all that. So I think that the first story arc definitely works, and I think it's probably represents the best of the Young Jedi Knight series. Now, the second story arc of this 14-book series continues with Shards of Alderaan, which feels almost like a standalone story, but it really kicks off the second major story arc, that being the conflict with the Diversity Alliance. But Shards of Alderaan might be my favorite book of the 14. It does work as a standalone, but it introduces Boba Fett into the story, and the role he'll be playing throughout the remainder of the story arc. Now, it has since been retconned that it was actually Boba Fett that participated in the events of the Young Jedi Knight series. It has since been changed to where it was actually Boba Fett's daughter that was masquerading as him. That's because there's a line in one of the books where the leader of the Diversity Alliance implies that Boba Fett is female, and that conflicts with other stories, including Boba Fett. And so to work around that, they said, oh, it was Boba Fett's daughter that was masquerading as him the whole time. We never get that reveal at any point in the Young Jedi Knight series. This is something that was added later to kind of make sense out of everything. So it's like, like I've said before, the expanded universe, there was a lot of canon for a lot of these writers to keep track of. But, for me, Boba Fett is the more mysterious he is, the better. The more you reveal, the more you ruin the character. So if they wanted to imply that he's female and then not answer it, I'm like, that's okay. I'd have been fine with it, because it's Boba Fett. I don't know what the hell he's thinking half the time. I don't know what he is. I don't want to know what he is. It's one of the reasons I don't like the prequels, because they told us who he is, and I don't like that. But anyway, this story involves Jaina and Jacen Solo and their friends going to the remains of the planet Alderaan to retrieve a present for their mother as like just something nice to do for their mother, and they wind up crossing paths with Boba Fett. And this puts forth, not only is this a great standalone story, but a great setting, I think. Setting it in the planet, in the ruins, the destroyed ruins of Alderaan, I think is a nice setting for a story, and nice way to connect to the older films. But like I said, it works Boba Fett into the story, and gets things going on the second story arc as, starting with Book 2, Diversity Alliance, we find out that, let me make sure I got this character's name right. It is the leader of the Diversity Alliance is Nola Tarkona. A lot of these Star Wars names are weird, just bear with me. Nola Tarkona is a Twi'lek alien who leads an alliance of aliens, non-humans, throughout the Star Wars galaxy in the Republic, and wants to overthrow the Republic and make things better for the aliens, as previous governments have benefited the humans of the galaxy and not the non-humans. This kind of keeps in track with the way the Empire has been portrayed in the expanded universe, where it's revealed that the Emperor is super, super racist and doesn't like non-humans, and he basically begrudgingly promoted Thrawn because Thrawn was just that damn good at his job, but generally he doesn't like aliens. And they were so horribly mistreated under the Empire that they now want to form their own government and overthrow everything. And the early portions of the story arc are centered around them hiring bounty hunters. A lot of bounty hunters show up in this. Boba Fett, I already mentioned, who we find out years after the fact is not Boba Fett. IG-88, Dengar, Bosk is mentioned a couple of times, I think. And they're trying to find a person, they're trying to hunt down a person that knows the location of a secret weapon, another secret weapon of the Empire. The Empire's Plague, which is a deadly virus plague. God, that sounds familiar. That they can use against the Republic and uses this big biological weapon against them. And that takes us through the final 4 books of the story arc, the Diversity Alliance, Delusions of Grandeur, Jedi Bounty, and the Emperor's Plague, Book 11. Now, I already mentioned Book 7, Shards of Alderaan, might be my favorite book of the 14. It works great as a standalone, and it works great as kind of a nice starting point to get us kicked off into this whole new story arc. Feels like Season 2 of the aforementioned TV series that I talked about that I hope Disney never makes. I guess they can't make it now, given how they've already fucked the canon into the ground, but It's this story arc feels a lot more colorful. I think including the bounty hunters definitely helps. Bounty hunters are a big part of the Star Wars universe. We all love them. Anyone who's a Star Wars fan loves the bounty hunters, and anytime they get included, it feels like a big deal. And that is no exception here, including Boba Fett and IG-88 and all those guys. It's always makes for fun reading or fun viewing if they show up in Clone Wars, like one of the TV shows or something. Cad Bane was one of my favorite characters in the Clone Wars TV series. And it makes for a very entertaining read. I also think the idea of the Diversity Alliance is a very interesting one. It's, again, I'm always on the lookout for different villains and different threats in Star Wars because we've seen the Empire. We've seen it. It's been done to death. One of the biggest problems I had with the sequels. But here it's like, all right, we have these aliens that have a grievance with how they've been treated in the past. And now they've formed their own faction, and they're going to war with the Republic. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. That's different. Kind of understandable from their point of view. Many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view. That's my bad Alec Guinness impression. I have a friend who does a great one, by the way, and it's amazing. And he doesn't do Ben Kenobi. He does his character from Bridge on the River Kwai. It's absolutely outstanding. But anyway, I think the conflict is interesting. I think the characters they decided to include are colorful. We get a nice continuation of Zek's story as he actually becomes a bounty hunter himself and ends up being a nice ally to the Young Jedis in that regard, being kind of an informant for them. And all of that works really, really well. And ultimately, his arc is Jaina trying to sweet-talk him into coming back and being trained properly as a Jedi. Rather than the Dark Jedi he was in the previous story arc. So it's like, all right, so he starts off as a Dark Jedi. Well, he starts off as a friend, then he becomes a Dark Jedi, then he becomes a bounty hunter, and now it's like, okay, I'll join your little good guy club, and I'll be a good person. I'll be a good boy now. And that's pretty much Zek's arc throughout the 14 books. But I think it's... I think overall the Diversity Alliance books are intriguing. I think they're got some solid ideas. I think they've got some fun characters, and it feels different enough to work on. It feels different from a lot of other things that we've read in the expanded universe and in Star Wars in general. I think it stands out very well, and I think it makes up, like I said about the first arc, it makes up some of the better books in the 14-book series. So, we're 11 books into this, and things are going pretty well. And I think overall, I mean, these 11 books in total, I think you've got a pretty nice series of young adult reader books that work fairly well. But we'll see how they end things with the final story arc. And let's wrap things up with a discussion about the final story arc, books 12 through 14, which center around the resurgence of the Black Sun and a new person being added to the group of heroes. This person would be Anja Galandro, who, as we discover, was an agent for this underground version of the Black Sun, ultimately joins up with the Solo twins, but she has to overcome her own hatred of Han Solo, who she believes killed her father. And that creates some dramatic tension, especially in Book 12 when she's introduced. The final three books are Return to Ord Mandell, Trouble in Cloud City, and Crisis at the Crystal Reef. So we got a nice, bunch of different locations here. We get to go back to Ord Mandell, where they ran into that bounty hunter that changed Han's mind. We get to go back to Cloud City. We get to go to Mon Calamari, and we even get some interactions from Nien Nunb and the Celestian race as they get to play a role in the action. So all of that is pretty good. I like the idea of this new character that actually gets introduced hating one of the leads. It's kind of how Mara Jade was introduced. She came in hating Luke Skywalker, ended up marrying him and having kids with him. So it's a very interesting set of character circumstances and locations that we see throughout the final three books. Unfortunately, the final three books never quite get as interesting as what came before it. Like I said, the Diversity Alliance had a lot of really cool ideas, really colorful characters that were introduced. I think the first story arc was very straightforward, did a really good job of introducing the characters and, to use wrestling terminology, get them over. And I think all of that worked pretty well. This feels like an attempt to kind of extend the series, and they didn't really know what else to do. And the fact that it's only 3 books kind of paints that impression, is that they were just trying to keep the series going, keep the gravy train rolling, as it were. And so it never quite reaches the levels of intrigue or excitement that the previous books did, but they're solidly entertaining on their own. And like I said, I think there's enough material in there to create some interest and excitement. And, of course, Zek at this point is now fully on board with the Jedi. So his story arc's basically done at this point. But overall, it's a nice set of 3 books. The Black Sun, interesting choice for the villain. I feel like the Black Sun pretty much rose and fall with Prince Shizor. So him not being there kind of takes a lot of the bite out of that dog, makes him a lot less interesting without him. And because they were a great idea and a great concept for Shadows of the Empire, but picking them up here after Prince Shizor is already dead and they're basically a non-entity, it just doesn't work quite as well. At least not for me. They're probably the least interesting villains of the Young Jedi Knight series. Also, Anja, we also find out, is addicted to spice, and part of it is like a part of the story is trying to help her with her spice addiction, which is kind of has like that after school drug PSA special kind of feel attached to it, kind of sort of maybe, and yeah, it is what it is. You know, and like I said, this is for younger readers, so I guess it makes sense to have kind of like that anti-drug message thrown in there. But for what it is, they're entertaining books, just nowhere near as interesting as what came before it. So I would say if you're going to check out the Young Jedi Knight series, which are hard to find, unless you're on the internet, you can find other ways of finding anything, pretty much. Because they were not re-released as part of the Legends timeline for Disney because they came from a different publisher. Let me see if I can pull it up and see who the publisher was, because it wasn't... Okay, my source does not tell me. I don't have it on me, but so yeah, these books were not re-released because they came from a different publisher, so they were not re-released as part of Disney's like re-releasing of all the EU books and the Legends timeline and all of that. But you can find old copies of them on eBay and stuff. That's how I found them. And like I said, there's also the internet. Not that I'm advocating for piracy. I'm just saying, you know, it's available to those that want to use it, and that's how that is. But I recommend these books if you're looking for something a little bit simpler and quicker, faster, paced faster, and gets to the point. Doesn't get bogged down with a lot of side stories, which was one of my criticisms of Kevin Anderson's Jedi Academy trilogy, which has just got so bogged down with side stories and everything else that it just became a jumbled mess. And this was a lot simpler. Plays to a much younger audience, and it's quick, fast, and easy. And if you're a younger fan that wants to get into Star Wars, this is probably a decent one to start off with. If you want to get an understanding of what the expanded universe was all about and the type of stuff that your parents may have grown up with as far as their Star Wars books go, the Young Jedi Knight series might be a very good place to start with. So that is my thought. Those are my thoughts on this 14-book series, one of the shining examples of the Star Wars literature from my childhood. And I was glad to finally cover it. Now, what am I going to do moving forward with any more Star Wars book reviews? I have a couple of ideas. You probably won't see these reviews until 2021 because I still need to read all these books for the first time. But there were 2 book series that I have not covered at all. They come after the new Jedi Order series. Legacy of the Force and Fate of the Jedi. 2 series that I have not covered. I've heard mixed things about them. I've heard they're bad. Some people have told me they're bad. But, you know, maybe they'll be worth checking out, but I need to read the books first, so you probably won't see those reviews until 2021. There's also a few standalone books featuring Han Solo and Luke Skywalker that I may want to cover. Again, I haven't read those books yet. I will have to make time for those. So I have more reviews planned, but like I said, you probably won't be seeing them. You definitely won't be seeing them until 2021. So hopefully you all enjoyed this one. I was glad to be back to reviewing the Star Wars books. It was a nice little way to pass the time during the COVID lockdowns and everything. But yeah, hope you all liked it, and hopefully you all are excited for more in 2021. But that's all I have for right now. Thanks again, everybody, for listening, and I'll see you later.